All right. So we talked about GPP and some different factors that influence the ecosystem and how much GPP you can produce. The next thing we're going to talk about is how does that energy get transferred through the different trophic levels. So you have your primary producers that are producing primarily all the energy that is available for that environment, right? So they're transforming all that solar energy into chemical energy that could be eaten and used for the other trophic levels. Trophic level is just like a level of consumer. Troph means to eat. And so trophic pyramids are pyramids that show how much energy is in each level or how much biomass is in each level. You can see them either way, either both energy or biomass. This one is looking at energy. And so in this lake pond situation here, 86% of the energy is found in the primary producers. So a whole lot of the energy is found in these primary producers. When you come up to the primary consumers, this would be like your herbivores. So these are zooplankton that are eating these things. When you go up to your secondary consumer, these are going to be your predators. And they are eating this zoonotic, or this zooplankton. And so these fish eat these plankton, and so that energy is less as you get higher. We'll talk a little bit more about how this energy transfers and that stuff in just a second. So this is looking at a trophic pyramid based on this lake has 100% energy, 86% of that energy is in this level, 11.5% energy is in this level, and then 2.5% is in this level, give or take. Right. So as you go up in these pyramids, the amount of available energy decreases. It gets smaller. So that's for a pyramid looking at energy. Pyramids that look at biomass, depends where you are. So in the terrestrial ecosystem, that first base, your primary producers have a lot of energy. They also have a lot of the biomass. As you move up to your primary consumers, less energy, less biomass, secondary, tertiary consumers. But if you look at aquatic systems, a lot of that energy is made by those primary producers, or that is contained in these primary producers, but not a lot of the biomass. Remember that the standing crop in your algae or in your aquatic environments is really low because they divide really fast. And so they just get replaced and eaten almost as fast as they're getting replaced. So that standing crop is really small. The herbivores kind of fill in that intermediate role. And then as we go up, your tertiary consumers have a lot of biomass. So think of things that you find in the ocean that are really big. A lot of them are going to be predators, right? Or maybe not in the sense that you think of predators. So whales are really large, right? Great white sharks are pretty big. Sperm whales are pretty large, but the largest whale in the world, or the largest animal ever, if we're talking about size, mass-wise, is the blue whale, right? And what does blue whale eat? Well, they eat krill, which is something that feeds on plankton. So if you think about it, your blue whale is a carnivore. They may be more of an omnivore, because they eat phytoplankton too. They eat a whole bunch of stuff. They're just a big old grazing machine. And so biomass-wise, there is a lot more biomass standing crop-wise for your tertiary, secondary consumers in your aquatic systems, not so for your terrestrial systems. Okay, so as we move through these trophic levels, you're going to have a consumption efficiency. This is the percentage of energy or biomass at that level that is consumed by the next level. You don't ever want a consumption efficiency of 100%, because that means everything in that lower level has now been eaten. That means they're extinct, right? So on the consumption efficiency, always want something left over so it can come back. Assimilation and net production efficiency. So assimilation is going to be how much of that energy that was eaten is available for the next trophic level. So we talked about assimilation earlier. So they bring in the energy and then they can either assimilate it or excrete it. It gets egested, right? And so you really want a high assimilation efficiency for that next level up. Your net production efficiency is how much of that assimilated energy is used for growth and reproduction, because that assimilated energy could also be used for respiration. And so how much of that, if you remember when we saw plants, we said 1% of that solar energy gets used for photosynthesis. And then 60% of that 1% goes to respiration. Only 40% of it ends to the net production efficiency. Only 40% of it is used for growth and reproduction. Only 40% of it, of that 1%, is available for the next trophic level. Which is just crazy to think about. Like, what if plants were more efficient? That would be cool. You could have a lot more organisms in a smaller space based on available food. And all these just kind of end up coming to this bigger idea of ecological efficiency. So that's the percentage of net production from one trophic level to the next. So how much of that consumed efficiency is used for the next level? This is what you think of as like food chain efficiency. So we have our grass here. Your little herbivore eats that grass. How much of that ingested energy goes to production that then can go to this mouse? And then how much can this mouse take, and how much of that goes into that net production used for growth and reproduction that the snake can get? And for the snake to the eagle. And then when the eagle dies, its body will get degraded and broken down into different elements that the plant can use. You get this big food chain. Typically, ecological efficiencies range between 5 to 20%. So the grasshopper can use 5 to 20% of the energy, of the assimilated energy in this plant. The mouse can use 5 to 20% of the assimilated energy in this grasshopper. The snake can use 5 to 20% of the assimilated energy from this mouse. And so, as you're going up, you're basically only getting 10% of the energy from the level before. So if we're talking like, this is 100% energy, this thing would get 10% energy. This thing, if we're basing it off of the 100% energy of the grass, is only getting 1% of that 100%. This thing is only getting 0.1. This thing is only getting 0.01% of the available energy from this thing. So if you think about that, like humans, we're omnivores. We can eat pretty much anything, right? We can have plants. You can have vegetables, fruits, whatever, roots. We also eat meats. So fish, beef, bacon, right? If you're thinking about how much energy you can get per item, per area of land, the most efficient way is by eating more plants. Because you're getting 10%, right? If you're right here, if you're in the spot of the grasshopper eating the plant, you're getting 10% of that 100% that the plant can make. If you're eating more meats, you're getting 1% of what that plant can make. That's if you're eating herbivores, right? If you're eating carnivores, well, depending on where it is in that trophic chain, like, you're getting less than 1%. That's just crazy to think about. So, what's better for the earth? Probably moving towards a more plant-based diet, because just energetically speaking, it's more efficient. Alright. The next thing is talking about stoichiometry. Pretty sure everybody in this class has had chemistry before. And you might remember stoichiometry in Chem 1, Chem 2, where you take things like milliliters and transform it to moles or grams or whatever. That's stoichiometry. We also have ecological stoichiometry, which is a little bit different, but it's still based on balance. And we're talking about the balance of nutrients. So, what animals need to survive, and how that need is different for different animals. Dr. Puni Jajay Singh in the biology department does ecological stoichiometry. He looks at this stuff in these little guys here. This is the water flea, Daphnia. And he looks at Daphnia and the ecostoich that goes on with that. Basically, Daphnia grow really fast. And when you look at their nitrogen to phosphorus level, they need a nitrogen to phosphorus ratio of about 15 to 1. So 15 parts nitrogen to 1 part phosphorus. And that's because they grow really fast. They need more of that phosphorus. They need a lot of energy, right, to grow fast. Phosphorus goes into the ATP. Versus your copepod, this thing here, they grow fairly slow. And copepods need about 50 to 1. These guys are 1-5 to 1-15. These are 5-0 to 1-50. So they need a lot of nitrogen compared to their phosphorus, because they don't grow really quick. They don't need all that energy to put forth into growing. And so you can see that body-wise, structure-wise, they look kind of similar. Lifestyle-wise, they're very different, and they need different nutrients to do that. My PhD was looking at macronutrients. Similar to ecological stoichiometry, it's something called a geometric framework, where you look at what macronutrients are important. And I did this in jumping spiders and found that, like, fats, lipids are really important for jumping spiders because they need that energy to grow. If you supplement that with something like a carbohydrate, something like a nectar, with a high protein diet, they grow even better. And so macronutrient wise, like sugars and proteins work really well for spiders to get bigger quicker. It also increases their survival and a lot of stuff that we're not going to get into in this course, but if you have any questions, please email me. Alright. And so that's it for this one. Think about, why does the energy in the pyramid get large reductions as you move up? So looking at this one, why do you go from 86 to 11 to 2? And what Why does organic matter accumulate in cold, dry biomes? So at the very beginning, we talked about this invasive earthworm and how they were eating all those leaves that are building up in cold, dry environments and doing well. So naturally, what is breaking stuff down in these cold, dry environments when you don't have those earthworms? In wet environments, what do you have that are breaking it down? A lot of these things are fungi or earthworms or snails, slugs, stuff that need pretty warm, wet environments. And so you see a buildup of this organic matter when things are colder and drier because there are less organisms to break those down. And so you get an accumulation of it. And that is it for this chapter.